How's it going, guys? I am your local hopeless historian, and today I will be sharing with you my very first academic presentation at the Many Faces of War conference at South Dakota State University in October of 2021. This conference was filled with incredible nerves as I turned a 20-minute speech into well below 15, but I was incredibly embarrassed and nervous and quite hesitant to upload this, but I figured at worst we'll get a laugh, at best we'll have someone see this and realize that not everyone's perfect at speaking and we all make mistakes and we learn from them. I have since gone on to present at one other conference in Kentucky where my speech was a little bit more well-paced.
Hello, everybody. I would like to preface this with this is solely dealing with the Korean descendants. I would have loved to have spent time on every descendant, except for the literature isn't always quite there and time is quite a restraint. During the post-Nanking Massacre phase of the Pacific War, the Japanese government became systematically involved in the building of prostitution houses and quasi-brothel. The comfort woman is a translation of the Japanese term ianfu, a euphemism for prostitute, and was used in official Japanese government correspondence and documents explaining the brothels and houses that these women stayed at and conducted their business called comfort stations. Now the term has gone from a euphemism for a prostitute to what is currently seen as a person that was used by the Japanese government during the Second World War as sex workers. For over several decades, it was not until recently in the 1970s that stories from comfort women and their experience during the Second World War, the global knowledge of their existence and role during the war have come to light. The reality of comfort women is still an issue of the Japanese government through admittance of participation in the system through the Kono Statement in 1993, in which Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoei Kono, on August 4th of that year, after a government investigation, confirmed the Imperial Japanese Army had forced women to work in military brothels. Since the statement, they have began to attempt to make their involvement and the existence of comfort women gradually fade from common knowledge through omission and reducing the topic to footnotes in textbooks, which was a result of multiple court cases through Dr. Ienaga of the University of Tokyo. In September 1931, the Manchurian Incident launched Japan's military aggression in China, escalating what was formerly a conflict to what would become a war. Roughly 6 years later, in December 1937, the Japanese captured the Chinese city of Nanjing, the moment known as the Nanjing Massacre. The massacre occurred over a period of 6 weeks and ended early 1938. During this period, soldiers of the Imperial Japanese Army murdered Chinese civilians and perpetrated widespread acts of looting, murder, and rape, with at a conservative number, 50,000, and at the highest number that was given, 300,000 deaths. The Japanese authorities believed establishing a comfort station would help prevent soldiers from committing random acts of sexual violence against women in the occupied territories. A great concern after the Nanjing incident, in addition to safeguarding its reputation, as well as military authorities were also concerned with the health of their troops, of course, which prompted close supervision of hygienic conditions in these comfort stations. In addition to Korea's comfort woman issue directly affecting the survivors, it has also had a profound effect on the children that were a result of the use of comfort women. The question is that mainly posed is, are the children that resulted from military comfort women Korean or are they Japanese? These questions arise due to the various nations' nationality laws during the post-war period, as well as laws and policies of recent years. When it comes to the Japanese policies and actions leading to and during the conflict on Korea's annexation and assimilation, the vast majority of these would be absolved due to Japan's surrender in 1945 and subsequent restructuring of Japan's government and constitution in late 1945. In late 1945, hundreds of thousands of conscripted Korean laborers, many of whom were born in Japan, though still would be considered as foreigners, sought Japanese citizenship, though Japan would heavily limit the number of citizenships granted. As for the children that have been born in China to the Japanese during the conflict, known as Japanese orphans in China, those who could locate their names on a pre-war Japanese koseki or registry would be allowed to live in Japan indefinitely. However, they were not granted automatic Japanese nationality. However, due to the nationality law of 1950, a person is a Japanese national if either of his parents is a Japanese national, provides nationality for these aliens, which under Article 2 of Japan's Nationality Act provides 3 situations which a person can become a national at birth. When either parent is a Japanese national at the time of birth, if born abroad and the child is a foreign national at birth. The child must be registered within 3 months of birth, or otherwise will have to live in Japan before the age of 20 and notify the Ministry of Justice. When either parent dies before birth and is a Japanese national at the time of death is the other clause. However, both of these clauses both require before 1985 that the father be the Japanese national. And third final stipulation of this would be when a person is born on Japanese soil with both parents unknown or are stateless. Additionally, a system for acquiring nationality after birth is also available. If an unmarried Japanese father and non-Japanese mother have a child, parents later marry, and a Japanese father acknowledges paternity, and the child can acquire Japanese nationality, so long as the child has not reached the age of 20. Japanese nationality laws effective from 1985 have been that if the parents are not married at the time of birth, the father has not acknowledged paternity while the child is still in the womb, the child will not acquire Japanese nationality. However, in 2008, Japan's Supreme Court ruled that denying nationality to children born out of wedlock to foreign mothers is unconstitutional. However, with these rules, the age limit is 20. Most of these victims at the time of their passing would be in their 40s. This age limit would cause issues with the direct sense of the Korean women due to them indefinitely being aged out of every single one of these processes. Though there is a process in which an individual past the age of 20 is able to become a naturalized citizen in Article 5 of Japan's Nationality Act, the individuals must have 5 continuous years of residence in Japan, sufficient capital skills, either personally or within family support themselves in Japan, and final clause is being stateless or willing to renounce citizenship and swear allegiance to Japan. However, within this process, individuals are given a language test, interview, as well as a booklet of required documents that must be provided through their home countries or through the country's embassy in Japan. These policies leave those born from the victims in a situation that makes gaining citizenship nearly impossible, along with the deserved rights that come with this, due to most of the victims' parents being of Korean descent, them being aged out of these policies, and an effect of the military comfort women system was most of these women were virtually unable to gain work due to psychological damage, due to being shunned within their own communities inside of Korea. So they would not have the financial capital to really show that they had any standings. And with the language barrier, you have to have a language barrier of an equivalent of a 6th grader, which in modern education will take about 3 to 4 years at college level. As for Korea, as it pertains to South Korea's nationality laws, due to South Korea's first nationality laws and policies, which remain intact until 1997, the 1948 nationality law adopted a patrilineal bloodline as its primary principle, which includes those who do not have a male Korean bloodline from becoming citizens. The nationality law discriminated against the children of Korean women as opposed to that of men. While children of Korean men acquire citizenship at birth regardless of their mother's citizenship, children born to Korean women and foreign men could not. Prior to 1990, the Republic of Korea, which held a strong ethnic-centric nationalism was also very exclusive towards ethnic Koreans abroad. First, it encouraged them to become naturalized citizens in their host states until the 1980s. The policies of the nationality law would become challenged by various women's movement organizations, which had been struggling against the patriarchal family laws from the 1970s. Finally, in September 1997, 47 women's movement organizations petitioned Korea's National Assembly, demanding that it revise the nationality law. The Republic of Korea entered into the National Covenant of Civil and Political Rights in 1990, and the international and domestic pressures against gender-based discriminatory provisions in nationality laws became greater. As a result, Korean judges would pressure the government to revise its 1948 nationality laws. The Seoul High Court then decided to raise a constitutional question to the Constitutional Court in August 1997, the finding that the gender discriminatory provisions in the 1948 nationality laws might be unconstitutional. The National Assembly passed a new nationality law based on bilateral bloodline, making children of Korean parents eligible for nationality regardless of parental gender. In conclusion, these nations' conflicting definitions of being eligible for nationality at the conclusion of the Second World War created questions for the children of eligibility of nationalities decades after the fact, and well after they had all aged out of many of the policies which disqualified eligibility upon reaching age of adulthood from each respective country. Or having been placed in impossible scenarios. Even if a child was born in Korea or Japan, as from one of these women, the regulations resulting from the patrilineal bloodline created unclear answers. Without a designated nation, these children, even with their amendments to allow maternal bloodlines to vacate nationality rights, without no national identity of Japanese or Koreans for such a long period of time, can they still identify with the culture's values and norms, even when their nation and cultures may not accept them as one of the collective, due to being a descendant from a mother that was a victim of such horrendous crimes that within the Korean culture were seen as outcasts due to the lack of purity once coming back from the war, or be it from their fathers being the perpetrators of these acts of sexual violence against these women. Though inevitably many of these individuals would find a nation to call home, the muddy period of time that left them in limbo of their eventual nationality is rapidly becoming irrelevant due to the majority of the victims passing on and the direct descendants of the comfort women closely following suit. Many of these people did end up finding a place to call home. However, there was not a ton of research on following up on the children of the individuals. However, there was a lot of research in following the individual victims. So even with contacting embassies, there was no clear answer that I was able to get. However, from what I'm assumed from this is that many of them would have become Korean citizens due to the more ease of the maternal bloodline allowing for citizenship, whereas with the Japanese citizenship, you needed to prove a parent was Japanese in descent. I'd like to thank you all for your time. If anyone has any questions, I'm completely open to answering.
That's it. Like, comment, subscribe. Video done.